Don't really know what the government's doing, and it's got me worried with potential inflation, market downturns, and possible changes to Social Security. How do I create a retirement plan that can handle all this uncertainty? Bill, a very good question, and I'm sure you're not alone in asking that. First, control what you can control. It is about your economy, not the economy. So you have to take steps to prepare for an all-weather plan. In other words, your investment strategy, if you're getting close to retirement, certainly doesn't need to be entirely in growth mode, entirely in the market. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But the number one thing I would still say is you do need to stay invested. You know, we had an interview with Andrew Beatty, GenWealth CIO, just last week on the Get Ready for the Future show. And I mean, within 60 seconds of completing that show, Tim, we had a market rebound that was one of the biggest on record. I believe it was the third biggest single-day gain in S&P 500 history. And it brought into mind something we've shown on this show before, but we're going to do it again for our video audience. And it's this concept of missing the best days in the market. Certainly, you could make a case that last week was the best day we're going to have in 2025. It's going to be hard to top it. It's only been topped twice in market history if you're measuring by the S&P 500. But take a look at this for our video audience. The 30-year annualized average return of the S&P 500, 8%, and that's over the last 30 years, as it says there, going from 1994 through the end of 2024. If you miss just the 10 best days of the market over that 30-year time frame, your average, rather than 8%, would have been 5.26%. And you can see the rest of that chart. Miss the 20 best days, your average return is 3.4. Miss the 30 best days, it's 1.83. Miss the 40 best days, and you're pretty much flat. And if you miss the 50 best days over a 30-year time frame, you would actually have a negative return. And the reason is, just like we saw last week, the biggest days in the market tend to happen during the worst times.
It's usually during very volatile times. So we're seeing big ups and downs and things like that. It usually comes after a big downturn in the market. We had a couple of big days, and then all of a sudden there was going to be a suspension of the tariffs for 90 days, and boom, the market took off and was up almost 10%. Yeah, we don't see that very often. And oftentimes when we do see it, I mean, it's rough times. And I know that there's people out there that get concerned when that market starts going down and they start seeing their retirement account balances go down, especially if you're closing in on retirement. But jumping out, we say that, no one gets hurt on a roller coaster unless you jump off, so we don't want to jump off that, the ride. We want to make sure that we stay the course because, again, we saw right there on that chart how quickly your returns go down if you just get out of the market and try to time it maybe when you're missing those best days, because those best days don't come around very often. And so we need to stay the course. But then again, if we're close to retirement, in that retirement red zone, we've got those long-term assets that we need to stay the course, but we also need to start bringing some a little bit more conservative. So again, we need to make sure that we have a plan that's going to weather the storms that we go through. And this is one of those storms that we're going through. There's a lot of noise out there right now with all kinds of different things, whether it's the tariffs or whether it's what the government's doing, how sometimes not working together, what Social Security may take place there in the next 10 years. So there's lots of things that we need to make sure that we are looking at, but we need to control what we can control.
Yeah, and when it comes to that investment strategy, we've already alluded to it, but let's kind of nail down here as we only have about a minute and a half left until our final bell. When you think about dividing that volatility out, we just said with your growth investments, with your stock-related investments, you have to be still long-term minded. You have to have that mentality that you're in it for the long haul, and you can't bail because you might miss the best days, and that affects your overall return. But that's only a piece of the equation when you're retired, because you are potentially, more than likely, using some of your assets as income. So that income that you're needing today and for the next 5 to 10 years does not need to be exposed full on to market risk, because it may take a while to rebound. Now, this volatility session that we're in now may only last a month or 2 months or 3 months, but there are recessions and significant bear markets that could last several years. So you don't want to be selling any of those investments while they're going down in value. The investments need to be able to be left alone and let the market work itself out. So that really brings up the idea of, what do you use for short-term investments? And that comes into more of a fixed income or principal protected type of investments, where they're not going to go down in value during times like this.
Yeah, some of those things that aren't going to move a whole lot.
Yeah, I didn't give you any time to talk.
You really didn't.
I tried to get out of it. There is the final bell, and it is time for our final thoughts. And Bill, I will say for Bill, we didn't really get a whole lot of time on your question, but we just took the bird's eye view of it. But if you want to learn more about the bucketing strategy that we use for investment strategy and for withdrawal strategy, a retirement income plan is the answer. And we'll talk a little bit more about how Bill and anybody else can get one when I come back for my final thoughts. Tim, we'll start with you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just all this, have an advocate. I mean, there's so many different things, so many different questions people have. You may hear different things. There's lots of noise out there. So financial education, a lot of people Google things and they're learning things, or they think they're right, but everyone's got their own opinion, and it's so easy to put things out on the internet anymore. Find someone that's actually going to have your best interest in mind. Sit with them. We love doing that with our clients and being able to help them through this process, because there are so many moving parts. We just want to simplify that for them and educate them so they have an understanding and also feel good about going into retirement.